Joining us now here live in Washington, D.C. is Jack Brewer, former safety, the defensive back with the Minnesota Vikings, with Philadelphia Eagles. You got your Giants shirt on.
Yes,
so
I do.
Also with the Giants, I remember you with the Vikings. He's also the CEO of the Brewer Group. Now, I want to get to coronavirus, MLB, and then we're going to get to football and into some other stuff, Jack. So 14 Marlins test positive for COVID. They can't play for 2 weeks. That's part of the rules. They played in Philadelphia. They canceled the Philadelphia game. None of them have symptoms. Now there's a movement, of course, underfoot, like the entire liberal establishment, all the left wants to shut down MLB, so people don't have that to watch, as I did this weekend. And basically the Marlins are saying, look, we got 30 people on the roster. We're going to make it through 2 weeks. But, my view, Jack, is we're going to have to deal with this now. And you can't just shut everything down because 8 people get sick.
That's right.
What's your view?
It's tough. It's unprecedented, obviously, in sports. We've never had anything that's been so challenging. You're in a locker room together. So, guys, when they get a cold, your teammates get a cold. If you get the flu, it spreads. I remember being in college and, some guys had MRSA, had an outbreak, in our locker room. So those things will happen. Staph infection and all of that, and you don't just shut things down when those things happen. You figure it out, and I think when you look at it, what happened to asking the player, what do you want to do? Why is politics always jumping in to our personal lives and our jobs, and whether or not I can send my kid to school? Listen, if a teacher doesn't want to go to school, then let someone else teach the kids. There's substitute teachers. I mean, there's so many ways to approach this pandemic, I think, and especially when people don't have symptoms. I think that's, it's one thing if someone's sick. It's one thing if someone has a compromised immune system. But these baseball players are healthy guys, and you don't, there's a reason why you're not seeing a bunch of pro athletes hospitalized with the coronavirus. If you were, I think common sense would tell you that we should approach it a little bit differently. But that's not what we're saying. Exactly.
In fact, of the 14 Marlins players that tested positive, every single one of them is asymptomatic. Yeah. So you have no symptoms. Now, I get quarantine. I get it. You don't want it to spread. But you have no symptoms. Yeah. So why would you cancel a baseball season based on that?
It is what the left wants to see happen. They want to see if they can cancel things, if they can keep the fear. It gives them a better opportunity to get rid of President Trump. And sadly, everything that you see in our country, when it comes to most people on the left, their goal is to get rid of President Trump, no matter if it's shutting down schools or sports or whatever it is. I mean, even, the man's being blamed for racism in slavery that's been around. Stuff that happened 400 years ago is all of a sudden, he is the target and he's the symbol of hate for them. And it's really sad to see people get so far away from reality, man. Right. It's like they're just creating their own reality.
Jack, we're with Jack Brewer, CEO of the Brewer Group. Jack's also former NFL player, Minnesota, Philadelphia, and the New York Giants. Jack, where are we going with this? I mean, you see these riots, you see the mobs running around, scaring a lot of people. I mean, we see in Richmond where we own businesses, the city is just horrible. Stores boarded up, looted, things of that nature. Where's this going?
We are at a point, a tipping point, where as Americans we always know, with our Constitution and with our history, we've always overcome. This one is a little bit different because this one, the first time we've ever had the soul of our children be so exposed. That is what scares me. What scares me is to look out and to see a generation being raised that are being taught not to love our country. We've never faced that before. We've always been in America where, whether you come here as an immigrant, you love America. If you're born here as an American, you really love America. This is the first generation that's being raised that is being questioned and that is being tested. That's what really scares me. What scares me is our most underserved people are now being brainwashed with a doctrine that's anti-American. And you're seeing it, as you mentioned, in sports, and you're seeing it across our American society. And as people, we have to really understand what we're facing. This is not a war, or this is not an epidemic that we can fight the way that we fought ones in the past. This is a foundational issue. And whenever your foundation is rotten, and whenever your core is being attacked, you got to be a little bit more strategic. And I just hope that the American people really open their eyes up to see the significance and how serious the current situation we're facing really is.
Jack, what would be your message to African Americans right now that are they're legitimately frustrated by what has gone on with George Floyd, what they see as injustices, what we call systemic racism, and now they're going from protest to protest. I was reading an article about a young lady that went to 5 protests in 5 different cities on 5 days. Now she's become like a professional protester. She just goes from city to city, and not to just rabble rouse, because she's upset about what has gone on. What's your message to black young people in America that really feel that we have an unjust society? What do you say to them, Jack?
I will say to them that you're right. Most societies you go in America, or you go to Haiti, you go to parts of Africa, you go to India, you go to China, wherever you go, you're going to have injustice. And there are oppressed people all over the world. You want to talk about slavery? There are slaves still. There are more slaves now than there were 400 years ago during the transatlantic slave trade. So we can't sit back on that and not empower ourselves from within. And that's really what my message would be. My message would be, we can't allow past injustices, we can't allow our iniquities to continue to impede on our progress as a people. Our kids don't have fathers. We are killing ourselves. And the reason why we're killing ourselves is because we have removed God from our society, particularly in the black community. I'm going to speak to that because growing up in my time, I'm 41 years old. Growing up in my time, we went to church on Sundays. Growing up in my time, we respected our elders. Growing up in my time, we didn't talk back to a police officer or ask them why you're pulling me over, or get in their face and question them. We didn't disrespect our teachers. We didn't disrespect our coaches. We said yes, sir, and we said no, ma'am. And we looked people in their eye. And we went to school, they had a paddle. And if you didn't get your butt whooped for doing something wrong while you're outside, your uncle down the street may have done it, or your neighbor may have went and told your mom. We don't have accountability anymore in our communities. And to be a race of people living together amongst each other, and we're killing 10 times more people than anyone that is from the outside coming in and killing us. And we're not standing up for our own. We're not standing up for our own babies. We're not standing up for our own little girls that are being trafficked and raped and taken advantage of by our own people. If we're not going to stand up for ourselves, how are we going to expect someone else to come in and stand up for us? Why are we looking for justice from the outside when we're not giving justice from the inside? It starts from within, man. And that's any house, that's any family, that's any community, any society. You got to hold yourself accountable first before you expect others to be accountable for you. That's my message, man. We have a crisis going on. We have 77% of our babies born out of wedlock. The traditional family is being broken down before our eyes. We let a movement hijack the word Black Lives Matter. They let them hijack it. It's an anti-Christ movement that's calling for homosexuality rampant, calling for transgenders, calling to break up the traditional marriage. Why do you think our kids are so confused? Our kids are confused because you're telling them they can be boys or girls. Look how long their fingernails are now. Look how long their hair's all draping down. They're confused, man. We've confused a generation of kids. And that's what's going on in our society. They don't have a core. How can they have a core? You've removed it from them. It's sickening. It's sickening. It's got to end. And then you go back to Scripture. There's a reason why Christ told us to serve the fatherless. There's a reason why Christ told us to serve the widows. It's a reason why Christ told us to serve the captives. The reason why is because if you don't, you have what's happening in America. There's a reason why those three demographics were specifically mentioned in the Scripture over and over again, because that's where your core comes from. When you remove those things, you remove God. When you remove those things, you remove morality. And that's what we're seeing amongst our eyes. And we can look and try to complicate it and politics and pass this policy and that policy and we need to do this politically. None of that's going to fix this problem. This is a foundation issue. It's at the core of our country. And we better lock arms and start to pray, because this one ain't going to just pass by after an election.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We are with former NFL player, Minnesota Vikings, New York Giants, Philadelphia Eagles, Jack Brewer. He's also CEO of the Brewer Group. Jack, prophetic words that you're saying. I want to get back to two things you said. African-American families right now, 77% of children born out of wedlock. That's a stunning number. It's a scary number. Mm-hmm. It's a stunning number, which means that's now acceptable. How do you fix that, Jack?
You got to fix it by making it be shocking to your community. Like it literally keeps me up at night, man. Like it hurts me. Like I talk about these issues. I don't talk about these issues to get on TV or to get praise. Man, this stuff hurts, man. Like I cry over this stuff, man. And if you can look at your people, and be okay with women having babies and men and women, like we're okay with abortions. Even late-term abortions. We're okay with that, but you stand up for one white cop shooting a black guy? Like, it's crazy to me. We've had 20 million black babies aborted. Last year alone, you had almost 400,000 black babies aborted. You had nine blacks killed by cops. We had 7,000 blacks killed by other blacks. And so I don't expect white people. I don't need white people to tell me that I'm valuable. I don't need white people to tell me that my life's valuable. I'm a child of God, man. And there's no way that someone can tell me otherwise. I can speak my mind. I can go get an education. I can go get a job. If you don't like me, don't like me. But I'm going to like myself. And if we don't like ourselves, we're never going to fix this problem. We got to love ourselves again. But when you remove family and you remove all the godly principles that have been ingrained in us since the beginning, if you remove that, that's why we don't have any self-esteem. That's why it doesn't hurt us when we look out and see our kids being born out of wedlock. Man, you are 20 times more likely to go to prison if you don't have a father. 20 times. Think about that number, man. And you're wondering, you're trying to solve police brutality, you're trying to solve, the issues with policing. Who are the people that are having the majority of the run-ins with the cops? They're fatherless. So what are we looking around at? Who do you think is out there burning churches and throwing Molotov cocktails in the buildings and in the police cars? What percentage of those kids do you think have a father? Very few. Because if my son was out there doing it, I'd grab him by his neck. Right? So we this problem is not going away. Those kids aren't going to just all of a sudden have morality and have dads and have the fear of God. You don't just put that into people. God, so it's a culture and a society that, and this is not just a white and black issue. We need everybody right now. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a test of America. Are we really Americans? Are we really willing to break out of our comfort zones, break out of our bubbles, go in and try to help bridge this gap of fatherlessness in this nation? Because if we're not going to solve it. And as much as we look at all the issues and this is going on and that is going on, if we don't get our eye on the prize here, we know what the situation is. You're 6 times more likely to live in poverty if you're fatherless. You see the kids out there overdosing on drugs? Over 80% of those kids are fatherless. the teens that are dying from drug overdoses. Like it goes on and on and on and on. Education, I mean, every demographic, healthcare, every single thing. The worst of the worst are fatherless.
Let's get to, you brought Chicago up in the black on black murders there. So as a white male, 62, when I look at that, it's sickening. No. And so I see the protest around, and I'm like, well, what about the babies getting gunned down in their bed in Chicago? Like, where's the accountability for that? Where's the mayor? Like, where's the universal outrage? And so it becomes, you're right, it becomes confusing because, okay, I get the George Floyd thing. I get it, right? I mean, there's no bigger advocate of me that I've always said, you know, if my sons, I have two sons, if they were African American, if they were black, would I have a different conversation with them about being stopped by the police? Yes, no question, I would have a different conversation. But then you look at Chicago, and I'm like, where's the outrage? Like, where's the entire black community just going berserk over the fact that little children are being shot in their beds or playing in the backyard or in their car?
Decent humanity.
Understand that.
It's tough, you know. It's a psyche, right? And it goes back from history, and it goes back to wounds. And a lot of people are embedded and taught and trained as a young kid to think a certain way. One of those things in America, when you're African American in a lot of houses, particularly in the house I lived in as well, is you are grown to look out and see racism. Mm-hmm. So which means when you're raised to see racism, you're looking for it, mm-hmm. and you're trying to identify it because you want to. It's your protection mechanism. Like growing up, you know, I was one of the smartest kids in the class. I had good grades, and you know, I'd go to my class. Maybe there's 3 white kids in my class. Maybe I'm the only black kid, mm-hmm. and so I'm always looking around for the person either looking at me differently or judging me, or whatever it is. So it's kind of an ingrained. You're always looking for it. Cops pull me over, hands going up. Why? Because I know I've been taught that, man. You better.
But I was taught that.
I understand, but it's a little different because when you're a black kid, right? If you look over the history, like police, I don't know if you know the history of policing, but police were originally established to go out and catch the runaway slaves. Well, you're taught that when you're kids, like that ingrained perspective, you know, Emmett Till, those visions of people that were just, you know, lawlessness, right? So the history of policing is not, obviously, it's foundations, you know, there was racism there. So as if you keep ingraining that in the kids, and that's what you expect, and that fear builds up into them, mm-hmm. that's what happens. Mm-hmm. And so the only way you can get through that, man, is, I go back to spirituality because it's really the only answer. Mm-hmm. When you finally see yourself as valuable, mm-hmm. you stop caring what other people see and how they see you, because you don't fear man anymore. You only fear God. Like there's nothing anyone could tell me to where I'll sit in a room where the people say, oh, this person's racist. I could care less, because usually when I walk in the room, even if it's someone that's been branded racist, usually they become close to me, mm-hmm. and because people can feel you, right? Mm-hmm. But the only way you can feel my passion and feel my soul is to speak to me. Mm-hmm. But our souls also, people forget about that. We're not just flesh, man. We have souls, we have mm-hmm. spirits, and our spirits can feel. Well, we got people who don't even identify with their spirit. So what happens when you don't identify with your spirit? Evilness starts getting inside of you. Mm-hmm. You're easily manipulated, mm-hmm. right? What music do you think the majority of young African American kids listen to?
What?
That hip-hop music that's telling them F the cops over and over and over and over, and it's a good hook to it, and it sounds good, and you can bump it, and you can rock your head, but it's just putting this in your mind, and you're a victim, F the cops, F the cops, F the cops. So it gets ingrained into our kids. Don't forget, these kids, the majority of them aren't going to church. They don't have somebody praying over them every day. They're not opening up scripture in the morning before they go to school.
They're not praying every day.
100%. They don't. They're not even exposed to it. And so this generation we're creating, this is our country. Don't forget, like, this is not like we're talking about some other place, right? This isn't like, we're not going after China. We're not standing up to the Russians, right? This is in our own community. I mean, you had 104 people shot in one weekend in an American city. 104 people. And that's not a crisis. It's not a national crisis. People aren't going crazy. Only people that are right now in crisis are the people that live in that community. And they don't like it, I can tell you right now. But they're even confused because everyone tells them that they're supposed to vote for the same people that have been in office, allowing it to happen. Isn't that ironic? Mm-hmm. It's ironic that we want to defund the police. The same people calling to defund the police are the people who had the power to do something about.
And did nothing.
Did nothing.
And still do nothing today.
Still do nothing today. The same
Lord
people.
Lightfoot, nothing.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, sick. It's crazy. Jack, I want to thank you. We're out of time. Fantastic segment. Jack Brewer with us. Jack, former NFL player, Minnesota Vikings, Eagles, Giants, and now CEO of the Brewer Group. Jack, thanks for being with us.
God bless you, man. Keep doing what you're doing.
All right, man. Thank you.